You came here for an intro, so we're going to look at that. ASRock Taichi. Welcome back to Tech Yes City, and right here on the desk we have ASRock's flagship 5700 XT triple fans. The two outers are 90mm and then the middle is 80mm, and this middle fan actually has an RGB ring around it with the steampunk mechanical logo above that, which you can control in the software and change it from 7 different modes. They've also got an RGB LED light, which you can quickly switch it off if you need to, turn it back on. And then to the left of that, you've got your OC BIOS and your silent mode BIOS, which you've tested both here today. Out of the box, it comes defaulted to the OC BIOS. And I will say that this is the most aggressive 5700 XT I have seen yet out of the box. So keep in mind, it will use a little bit more power, but it will give you some impressive numbers straight out of the box. Though, at $480 USD, is this card worthy of a purchase? Let's run through all the bells and whistles here at Tech Yes City and then come back with a verdict. So what we can see with those gaming benchmark numbers here is that the silent mode BIOS is actually coming closer to that of the reference models, and it does so with pretty impressive noise numbers. I'll put the numbers up here for you guys. When we see even in the silent mode, the noise was quite well controlled, coming in pretty low with 34 decibels, but then we stepped it up to, even if you put it into the OC BIOS mode, you're going to be getting 61 fan speeds out of the box. And this is right where 60% is in terms of the numbers. It is a sweet spot, but in this case, I do like the silent BIOS actually better since it does use less power, the fan noises are lower, and the temperatures are just about the same as they are. Since we're using less power, we then don't have to stress the card as much in terms of the fan speeds. Going up to 80 and also 100% fan speeds on the default OC BIOS mode did make sure that we were getting some pretty uncomfortable levels of noise. But the thing to look out for here is that the 1230 gram heatsink is doing a really good job of cooling down this graphics card when we look at those delta adjusted numbers. And when we look at the clock speeds, this is another thing too. Very aggressive out of the box. It's hovering over 2 gigahertz. I was averaging out about 2050 megahertz. And then when I overclocked it, it still has that VBIOS limit in place of 2150, and you do get the option to add 50% onto the power limit, which in the software, you've also got the OC mode, which has a 10% power limit already installed, and then you've got default mode, which is not able to be selected unless you download the software, and then you've got the silent mode, which you can pick in the software too. And so that actually puts a minus 10% on the power limit, similar to undervolting, but as we saw with those gaming benchmarks, the silent mode is pretty much the default mode on most other reference XT models, even the Mech OC, which I tested in the past. So as Yoda would say, aggressively overclocked Taichi is, but the memory speeds are still at the default levels, even when you put it on the OC mode, which does leave a little bit to be desired if you want to get more numbers out of this card. But as I've seen here with pretty much the 5700s, 5700 XTs that come through here, the memory speeds are pretty much a luck of the draw thing. I've found some cards that don't even overclock at all, even if you try to get like 890 megahertz here. This card fortunately went up to around about 938 megahertz on the memory. It was quite large of a sizable overclock, and this did score some big numbers when I tested it in Strange Brigade, both at 1080p and 1440p. So the numbers were impressive for this card. It is looking like it's a binned sample, but quite an aggressive overclocked card, which does a good job of cooling not only the GPU itself, but cooling the memory and also the VRM, where those temperatures were quite low, even with the silent mode and the 60% fan speeds. That would be my two sweet spots. Now, going over all the numbers here, the Taichi does check out. It is a solid card, but keep in mind I haven't tested some of the exquisite models out there, like the Red Devil, for example. But speaking of this card in particular, as we said before, 1,230 grams. Massive heatsink on this thing. It spans over 310 mil long by 130 mil wide, so it is a custom PCB that they are using, and then it does have a depth of 53 mil. So you will have to make sure that your case is big enough to support this behemoth graphics card. Now, it does have the requirement of two 8-pin PCIe-ins, and at the rear of the card you get 4 display outs as well as 2 HDMI 2.0 outs. So in terms of the feature set, the overclocks, the input-output connectivity, RGB lighting, and the ability to have dual BIOS on board, this thing is checking out really well for a premium card. Though even though all those numbers check out, we still have that question that lingers in the air, and is this card worth the $480 USD premium? And honestly, you guys probably know what I'm thinking, and that is for $20 more, you can get an RTX 2070 Super, which will perform better, it will overclock better. And that's where it's sort of like it's $80 above that 400 USD MSRP. So it is coming at quite a premium. And so the one thing going for this card though, is that it does have the premium look. It does have the performance, does have the acoustics, and of course it does have the bling. I mean, the backplate on this thing with the Taichi mechanics on it is really well polished, as well as the RGB, and the front of the card looks wicked as well. Though coming in at $80 over that MSRP, it's just hard to say, go out and get this if you want the price performance. I'd say go out and get the Taichi if you love the look of this card and it's going to match your build. But other than that, I'm actually very curious to try out ASRock's Challenger Edition, which does come in at that MSRP and is a custom model. Though for what it's worth, a premium card at a premium price, everything checked out with this card. Very smooth experience. I do like what ASRock's doing with their graphics cards, and the fact that they're only relatively new to the scene and they're already pulling off flagships like this, I do like that. I'd just like to see the MSRP come down to maybe 450 or 440, and then I could recommend this thing as a nice option, even not just with the feature set, but also for the price performance. And now it's time for today's question of the day, and Nellie Nelson asks why, when you can go out and spend the extra £70 and go get an XFX or something better in terms of a graphics card itself. And he's referring to the Arctic Accelero, where we did a recent video on it. I'll put the link up here. And I was sort of on the fence with the Arctic Accelero. It does work extremely well, but I feel like it's a little bit dated, and I feel like they need to update the aesthetic. I'd like it if they updated the instruction manual. And for me personally, I had this big backplate that came included with it, and I decided not to test it. And that was simply because I just felt like I personally would end up probably damaging the card with the precision of cutting out the plastic on the back, where I feel as if they could have included a massive thermal pad. It would have just made things really easily plug and play. But the bottom line is the Arctic Accelero is a really good option if you, say for instance, come into a reference card that you've got secondhand and you don't like the reference noise and the temps that that puts out. Me personally, that was one of the things that I didn't like about the reference cards. And it's just an option that's there that if you've got a card, for example, and you've gone out and bought it and the noise just gets to you in the end, you've always got that option to go out and spend $50 and then make your card nice and quiet. And I must admit, the performance coming out of those 3 fans in that cooler is very impressive for the GPU temps themselves. So hopefully that answers the why, but in terms of the why, it's more of a niche, and I do agree with Nellie's original statement of just if you're going to spend the extra money, just go out and get a custom model. And with all that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button for us, or of course you could lay the Taichi smackdown on that like button. And if you have any questions or comments, or just let us know in the comments what you think of the Taichi 5700 XT. Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always. And if you're enjoying the content enough, there's the merch link in the description below, as well as that sub button ringing the bell, which apparently doesn't even work nowadays. So you might want to even just go Tech Yes City on YouTube and then bookmark the page and manually check it. That might be the best option. Anyway, I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.